Hello, everybody. This is obviously a extremely emotional time for me personally and for everyone associated, not only with the University of Tennessee, but with sport in general, because Pat Summitt really transcended sports. She'll always be forever connected to this university, but more so, it doesn't matter the sport, it doesn't matter if it's outside of sports. She was admired by all because of who she was, her value system, and her incredibly intense ability to compete at a level probably not witnessed prior to Pat becoming an icon. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I have many memories of Pat, but my first memory was as a young administrator when I was in a women's basketball coaching search. And I reached out to Pat. I had met her a few times, and I had 2 or 3 names that I wanted to bounce off of her. But she was in one of her postseason runs, and so I simply left a message telling her that when she had time if she wouldn't mind reaching out, and she called. Called the next morning. That's just who she was. She was always wanting to help anybody with any issue. That was germane to her personality. I've been very blessed to have known and worked with a handful of iconic coaches. I had the pleasure to visit personally a few times with Coach Wooden, and I had the pleasure of working with Coach Bowden, Coach Saban. I think what separates Pat is the fact that without Pat Summitt, women's athletics in general would not be where they are, in my opinion, and certainly women's basketball would not be enjoying the success it enjoys now, the visibility that it enjoys now. Pat Summitt took women's basketball and by herself elevated it to an incredible level. No other coach has ever impacted a sport the way that she impacted women's basketball. But again, she impacted people well beyond sports. Again, I've been around intense coaches. I myself am competitive to a fault, but I loved watching Pat Summitt coach because of how competitive she was. She didn't request excellence, she demanded it. And every player she touched, every person she touched, took a little bit of that with them, having known her. Well, she was great, Wes, and Tyler was great. Tyler played a big role in that whole transitional period. But just to have the opportunity to work with Pat, is something that I'll always cherish. Everything that Pat did was genuine. There was never lip service. There was always passion and credibility. When Pat Summitt said that being a student was more important than being an athlete, she meant that. She was probably one of the first coaches to set down very plainly her expectations about class attendance, about being a student, about excelling, sitting in the first 3 rows. She had hard and fast guidelines that were followed to the letter. If they were not followed to the letter, then you would find yourself watching the game from the bench. Didn't matter if you were playing for a national title or if you were playing a non-league game. Her standards were her standards, and people were expected to abide by all of them. Another thing that all coaches, regardless of the sport, and I've heard them over the years, admired about Pat is that there was never any lip service. We'll be in those discussions, Steve, and are in some of those discussions, but today's not the day for those types of decisions. But certainly we will do everything that we should do and more to honor and pay tribute to the greatest coach probably to ever coach the game. Just like she coached, Wes, when Pat had a priority, it became other people's priority. And I don't think there's been enough attention paid to the visibility that she's brought to that terrible disease. Not that those efforts weren't underway on a national level, but to have someone of the stature of Pat Summitt make that cause her cause did wonders for the awareness and wonders for the collective efforts to prevent that disease somewhere down the road from affecting so many people.